So welcome to you all. I'm Dr. Mark Seaton. Welcome to this first webinar. I invite you as you come in to mute your microphone and turn off your camera. And I'm going to stop the share and hand over to Simon.
Okay. Hello, my name is Simon Ward, and you are in the room for Actors' Wellbeing, Life and Work, hosted by Dr. Mark Seaton and me, Simon Ward, with the fabulous assistance of ASPAH and our friends around the world as well. Welcome to everyone joining us for the first of 5 webinars on different aspects of actors' health and well-being. I'm currently in Sydney, Australia. Welcome to those of you tuning in from around Australia, from around the Southern Hemisphere, from around the world, and any other time zone or universal vicinity. I'd like to begin first by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, where I'm coming from, on whose land we're hosting this webinar, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. These webinars are hosted by ASPAH, which is, if you aren't aware, the Australian Society for Performing Arts Healthcare, and also with the wonderful support of the Equity Foundation from the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, who provide wonderful assistance and training for low cost for members of MEAA. So I'm an actor, a psychologist and an educator, as I said, based in Sydney, Australia. And with us is my co-host for today, Dr. Mark Seaton, an honorary research associate in theatre and performance studies at the University of Sydney in Australia, as well as running his own creative wellbeing company and being one of the leading drivers for the advocacy for actors' wellbeing and the necessity of it and research into it around Australia and indeed around the world. So these are intentionally designed, these webinars, to reach out to the Australia, New Zealand, Oceania, Pacific, Asian regions, but we welcome those from Canada, from the USA, and from the UK. They are recorded and will be free and accessible to the public through the generosity of ASPAH. So thank you for that. And we'll let all of you who registered know when the recordings are available for replay, because the avalanche of pearls of wisdom that is gonna hit you this evening will be quite overwhelming. Frankly, I'm overwhelmed already, because I now have the privilege of introducing our wonderful guests. Starting with Talia Norrish. Hello, Talia.
Hi.
Give us a wave. Lovely. Coming to us from Brisbane in Australia. I'm going to read the bios. Talia Norrish is an Aussie Brit actor, a coach, a Master of Philosophy graduate at the University of Queensland's School of Sports Sciences. After graduating from the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts with a distinction in acting and musical theatre, and Rose Bruford College with a first-class honours in acting, and hopefully a t-shirt, Norrish founded the Actors Dojo, a pioneering coaching program centered on actor peak performance and holistic well-being. And this year, Talia's research focuses on the applicability and efficiency of a sport psychology-derived mindfulness modality in actor training, supported by a world-class advisory team of Professor Mallet, Associate Professor Rin, and Dr. Richard. The research is so cutting edge, it is sharp and will cut you just by reading it. It is fantastic and a thrill to have you joining us here, Talia.
Thank you.
With us as well, also from Queensland, is Gabrielle Rogers, is a film, television and theatre voice expert, vocal coach and researcher, and works primarily as a dialect coach in the film industry. And Gabriella's artistic intelligence and proven excellence over 20 years of working on voice for actors has made her not only the one of the busiest voice coaches in Australia. She's probably due on set in about 4 minutes, so we'll get what we can. But also she has incredible experience of the industry and a lived experience of working with actors on the front line in the coalface about how to integrate all of this stuff when they do not have time, when the pressures are immense and something has to happen fast. We're very, very privileged to have Gabrielle Rogers here. Hello.
Hi, Simon. Thank you. And thank you, Mark and Rebecca, for inviting me to join these incredible people this evening.
Thank you. Our last incredible person, Dr. Bernadette Minock, or Dr. Bernadette Pride, from Brisbane, Australia. One of those is her acting name, and the other one gets her not enough research grants. Dr. Bernadette Minock is a Matilda Award-winning nominated actor, a theatre maker, a singer, a writer. She was a founding member of a Sydney artist-run initiative, chair of a regional youth theatre. She's a director, a voice coach, a voice lecturer, working across tertiary acting training programs. Bernadette is interested in autobiography and performance, and her work uses song, dance, and verbatim data to disrupt dominant narratives and reclaim historically significant females. Bernadette is a graduate of the vocal program at NIDA, QUT actor training, and USQ in biographical performance. She is a proud member of MEAA and is represented by BMEG. Again, as someone who combines cutting-edge research with dealing with people on a daily basis and also in her own professional life, we're very privileged to have the range of experience that Dr. Bernadette brings. So welcome to you.
Thank you so much. By the way, at the moment, I'm filming in Murwillumbah, which is in New South Wales. So I'd just like to say I'm coming to you from the land of the it's the Minyungbul land and the Calabai people.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Well, in setting the stage, as it were, I'd like to frame the parameters of what we'll converse about with regard to life and work. If you have questions, by the way, during this webinar, please put them in the chat. They'll be collected, and then if we have time, we'll feed some of them through to our panelists. In seeking a career in acting, often the focus is on auditioning for the job, getting the job, doing the job, and looking for the next job. But how does your life fit in around this recurring cycle? And is keeping yourself performance ready part of the job or part of the lifestyle? Is there a difference? Does one bleed into the other? Is there a blurred zone? Can there be a difference? Should there be a difference? In terms of skills and aptitudes for creating dramatic work, studies of actors in training reveal that drama schools don't necessarily prepare actors for warming up and cooling down from rehearsal and performance practices. And some schools don't prepare students for the necessary lifestyle and pressures which accompany the incredibly uncertain and unpredictable profession of securing reasonably predictable, financially stable work. The Actors' Wellbeing Study, the Australian Actors' Wellbeing Study, which was conducted in 2013 and then published in 2015, noted that only about half of working actors had gone through any formal process of qualification for acting. So again, how do actors become industry ready? So within the professional working environment, there are stresses of the actual work with diverse, often under-regulated workplaces, multiple pressures from home, from our personal lives, from producers, from agents, from casting directors. And those stressors impact our lives, impact our relationships on set, on stage, in rehearsal, and in our personal lives. So as we have some questions for our guests. So the first one is, and we might, who's first one? We might go with Talia first with this one. Could you give us a little bit about your lived experience in managing work and life as an actor?
Yes, it's the million-dollar question, I think, and a fantastic one to start with. So to be completely honest, I think I only started managing that work-life dance when I took it upon myself to kind of conduct a series of self-experiments to work out how I could thrive just as much as a person as I was kind of as a performer. And so today I feel very lucky that I've reached a state kind of like that, but I would say it's a dynamic state and certainly not a static one. It definitely ebbs and flows. But those series of self-experiments prompted the creation of the Actors Dojo, which is a company I now run. And I think although we would never claim, and we're quite upfront about saying that we don't have the single panacea, I think we've been able to collect a small collection of evidence-based and time-tested frameworks or strategies that actors can turn to if they feel like they're not navigating that dance very well at this moment in their career. And again, I do think it ebbs and flows. So you can come to them when you need them and you can leave them when you don't need them. But I felt for me, those resources were lacking in my experience of being an actor. So having the dojo at least offer some suggestions, I think is a way that we want to empower actors to empower themselves as and when they want to.
Great, thank you. Yes, and you mentioned that the dance between life and work is a great metaphor. Love that one. I'm going to Gabrielle now, please. What has been your lived experience in managing that work and life well-being world?
Ah. Hello. I have so many questions. I don't know how to quickly answer that. My lived experience, I was an actorian from the ages of 14 to 28. So I was an actor. And I remember it pretty well. The question was, what have I learned about how to, it's so massive, like it kind of feels like too big to, but my lived experience of it is that from the ages of 14 to 28, I was an actor. And then from the ages of 30 to now, and I'm about, 907 now, I just have really good moisturizer. I work with actors. So I am a dialect and voice coach for actors. So I don't act and I get to work with them. And thanks to the incredible education that I've had from the ASPAH and now the PAMA, I'm learning how to support other people. And I have discovered, maybe this is my lived experience, I learned that I'm better at helping other people.
Great, thank you. Yes, I now have lots of questions too to follow up on that, but for the moment, we'll press pause and bounce over to Bernadette with your lived experience about the whole managing life and work and well-being.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious that the reason why we're talking about this is that because it is so hard to manage the both. And I would imagine there's a lot of people that would have a similar experience to me, is that as a child, I loved going to dancing school. I went to youth theatre, would do amateur plays and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's sort of where the first part of the well-being kicked in is so this is a thought for maybe parents in the future, is that if you encourage your child to be involved deeply with the arts, it then shouldn't be a surprise if your child then wants to study. Like for me, I wanted to study acting when I finished school. My parents were very surprised, and as much as they loved me, they wouldn't let me audition for the acting courses because they were worried about money. However, then the problem is that I did the teacher training, but then I went out and worked from the time I was 20 to the time I was 28. And I didn't have particularly the vocal skills that I needed, or the interpretation skills that I needed to really survive. And I think, like a lot of women, once it hits that 28, there's those other questions of children and other sorts of responsibilities that come in, that, like Gabrielle, I then moved away and I started working in actor training. But there was a point then where I recognised that my well-being was going through another crisis, like it did when I was 17 and again when I was 20, went through another crisis after about, well, nearly 25 years working in tertiary education, actor training, where I felt like I'd lost my own joy and I'd lost my ability. I had so much work working with the beautiful students, but it wasn't necessarily allowing me to continue developing my practice. So if anything, turning 40 was the great thing, because, and I think Laurence Olivier said every actor should turn 40. At that point, I was able to then start recognizing, to go, okay, it's real. I can't get away from acting. It keeps coming back. So that's, I think, another thing to think about when you're trying to work out how to cope with your with your own work-life balance is do at some point you have to accept that you can try to push it away, but it is going to be there. So the desire to work in the arts, you do have to honor yourself in that way. So since then, it's really been a bit of a mix and match, really. I feel like if you're asking about warm-ups and things like that, I feel like if I know that I'm focused on a project, that's when I'm much more strict with myself. And I will spend quite a bit of my day focusing on, you know, script work, warming up, etc. But if there's not a particular project coming up, that's when it's sort of, yeah, I might only focus for an hour or two a day. But having said any of that, I can't answer how you would deal with it financially. At the moment, financially, I'm okay. But in 2 years' time, I don't know.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for those some lovely themes about things need to be learnt and taught and then also practiced, but it's dynamic and it's evolving and it's flexible and it's changing, and but being open and aware of that. And I was just wondering, and this is sort of going to the next couple of questions. What were you not told, or what were you not prepared for? Gabrielle's hand shot up, as I'm sure did her blood pressure. Gabrielle.
Everything. We weren't told any of the things that we needed to know. And I'm so glad for the actors coming through their training now. But so everything in terms of, you know, I don't think that the educational facilities are, certainly they're no longer the problem or a problem. I'm guessing that most of them have shaped up a lot. But I think that the misconception of what actors do is the biggest problem that I come up against all the time, because I work with people who have graduated from degrees in acting and people who have never had an acting class in their life. Sydney Sweeney. I was lucky enough to work with this movie star who is the hardest working, the most diligent, the most prepared, the most professional, the most present and ready and brilliant and devastating and talented actor. And I really want to acknowledge what Bernadette said. When you have to honor your talent. If you're born with gifts, this for me is the physical manifestation. You're born with these gifts. You have to do it. It's what you're here for. So I respect that. And movie stars at that level, and also graduating or graduated actors who have got like a day player role on a big show, and they've got all of half a day on set. I'm constantly up against this, not up against, I'm constantly in this experience of how do you do it? How do you make it work? How do you make it work financially? How do you make it work emotionally? How do you make it work physically? And none of that was taught to me. I trained at, I think, like 4 different actor training academies. I would sort of piece together my own education, whatever I got into and whatever I needed. And at no point, popular culture, you know, social media, feeding this narrative of dream and passion, because nobody really knows what a performance or a movie or a great, you know, thing on stage. And we go, oh my God, that person has feelings. I have feelings. I'm an actor. I want to express my feelings. And I totally get that. That was me. I've been 11 all this time. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be heard. I'm the youngest, you know, I'm classic. Like, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I have an opinion. And so the world, not just the institutions, they feed this narrative of if you're singular, if you're devoted, if you want it enough, if you want it more than the person next to you, if you try your hardest, if you do all these crazy things, which are not untrue. There is a certain amount of compromise and sacrifice and devotion and craft and absolute structure and focus and singularity that is required if one wants to succeed in this game. But the idea that that's who you are, big mistake, big mistake. And that the healthy and wonderful people that I have been lucky enough and hopefully still will work with, the ones who have, you know, been through it all, and some of them are holding statues and some of them haven't earned them yet and some of them never will, but the ones that are really good at it and great at life, they recognize that they're lucky to be in work today. There's no guarantee that they'll be in work tomorrow. They've regulated themselves and organized themselves in such a way as to organize their financial life and their mental health so that this is not a problem. It's a hard gig and unemployment's horrible, but it's not a problem. Or if it is a problem, it's a problem that can be solved with either patience and letting it go, or just going back to craft and going, what am I doing wrong? Like, why aren't I booking the work that I want to book? So that all sounds a bit glib when we're talking about people that earn, you know, $15 million a movie. But my experience has been the same for day players who are, you know, I'm an MEAA member since 1994, 2214606, represent. And I now pay for both crew and Actors Equity just because I want to know what everyone's up to. You know, so I pay double. I'm just like, I'm there for the union, absolutely. Why is that? Yeah, so I work with a lot of people who are regular players, day players. What they were taught at university and their degrees, I can't speak to. But the ones that are thriving and booking lots of work and having a good time doing that, and also importantly, a good time being unemployed, they have something else. They have strategies and they have mentors that they may or may not talk about. Mark Seaton's one of my mentors. And they have structures and facilities. They still have that singularity of focus, but it's not a dream and it's not a passion. It's a craft.
I'm just writing that down. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Gabrielle. To Talia now, what were you not told or not prepared for?
Well, I mean, that's an incredibly hard act to follow, Gabrielle. Thanks for that. Perhaps in contrast maybe to Dr. Bernadette's experience, I did go through 4 years of formal drama training in the UK. And I found, and kind of a key argument at the dojo is that drama schools and these training institutions are fantastic at acting training, superb. Actor training is kind of non-existent at the moment. And so I think that ties in to a little bit to what Gabrielle was saying so passionately and eloquently there. I don't really have much else to add, but I mean, I felt I was exceptionally well prepared to go in for that 15-minute audition or the 8-hour rehearsal day or the 14-hour shoot day. Acting, fine. Being an actor, that was the hard bit. And I do think it is kind of objectively odd that we spend so much time and energy investing into playing characters and not the person who plays them. So I would say that's what I didn't get, to be completely honest and transparent.
Thank you. I think there will be a collective noun of heads nodding at that experience. Bernadette, for you, what were you not told about work or life or the whole business?
It's a hard one, I suppose, because I think it was more like I got so much don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You know, it's too hard, it's too hard, it's too competitive. How will you make a living? That I was, you know, I spent a lot of time trying to block that out, to go, well, I am a creative person. I need to somehow live as a creative person. So that has to then, the way I think I've then coped with it is trying to then go, well, how can I solve that? You know, if I can't be acting at the moment, can I be writing? If I can't get an acting gig, can I get some singing somewhere? You know, can I always be doing that sort of stuff? But if anything, when I think back now, I wish there maybe had been the question of what is it that satisfies you out of acting, so that when you walk away from a gig, yes, you might be thinking, where is the next paycheck coming from? But there's also a thing of like, well, did I work to my level of satisfaction? Did I do what I set out to achieve? What is that thing? Now, I don't know. Some people like the applause. Some people like the problem solving, you know, whatever it is. It's, I feel like I'm getting much better at that, of being able to go, well, you know, I only had one hour voiceover gig in the past 6 months. And it's like, yeah, but it was a great one. I had such a great time pretending to be a witch. And the people who were listening really felt it. You know, they were affected by it. And so for me, that's the thing. If I can get a key that I've affected somebody or something in some way, then I know that I'm okay, and I can go to bed and wake up the next day and think about, you know, where does the next job come from? So maybe it's something to ask students in training is, where does the joy come from? And how do you go about trying to accomplish the joy in each of your days?
Thank you. Yes, where does the joy come from? The idea about satisfaction, acting training versus actor training. So that's it. I think we're going to have a lot of what I call t-shirt moments for slogans out of today. Lots of merchandising. Shout out to our PAMA friends and our ASPAH friends. And that thriving when employed and thriving when unemployed, because thriving is independent of employment state. And even though, yes, there have definitely been some changes and movements in drama schools, and coming up we'll run a whole panel about training schools and drama training programs and the specifics of those. But it is fascinating to hear both the experiences you have had personally, but also the ones you've gleaned from the people with whom you work, who are out there doing the thing. And the difference between people who are clearly, oh, I'm okay in my personal world, and it's stable and strong, independent of my professional world, but it feeds into creating a sense of resiliency and, oh, I said the R word, sorry, Mark, the resiliency in my daily world. Here's another question. Thank you for those answers. It's fascinating. The notion of well-being as a thing, whether you spell it with one L or two, is one which has gained a lot of traction over the last decade. And so relatively recent conversation when you think about acting training going back a bit of a ways, and some responses to that both in the industry and also in training schools and also in society. And I'm speaking to this aware that Dr. Mark and I are quite white and quite male. So therefore I'm aware of those factors that are at play. I'd be really intrigued about what your experience of seeing, because all of you have been in the industry whilst conversations about well-being and mental health and that have come up in the industry. What is important about what has emerged in that for you? And do you think it's in an okay place? Do we need more information? Do we need less? Is it just a personal thing? If the industry have to step in? What's your take on the emergence of the actors' well-being sort of movement? Let's go with Bernadette, if you'd mind.
Yeah, look, I think it is really exciting that it's been happening, and and thank you, Mark, for doing that study, because when I got my Equity magazine and I saw when was it, in 2012 or 2013 when it was in the Equity magazine. When I read that was a revelation, because it was like, yeah, these are really tricky things, and there's often so much blame that gets placed on actor training. Well, it used to. I'm not sure if it happens so much now, but to have even a list of things that if you were going into actor training or you worked in actor training, let's have a look at, embedding these things. That is such a godsend to be able to go, okay, if I'm working with students, how can I help with these? When I'm working as an actor and with other actors, it's lovely now to know that there is that time or those moments where rather than that old idea of leave your troubles at the door, that there is a more practical recognition now that it's like, well, yeah, we've all got a job to do. So still, in the long run, there is a lot of stuff that has to be, left at the side while you're working, but that we don't have to set up a level of denial and lying in ourselves, because surely as actors, we want to be as believable as we possibly can. And if we're only working with people who suggest that we have to always leave everything at the door to be professional, well, you're sort of lying in your performance. I suppose, if anything, the only thing that I get a little bit worried about is the definition of risk, and finding the difference between risk that could be harmful and hurtful, and the risk that leads you to a breakthrough and challenges you and and builds your potential. And so that's the only one that I feel is tricky at the moment. And probably being a bit older, there are often times when I'll want to have a go at something, whereas some of the younger actors are a little bit more suspicious, and their experience is absolutely valid. But I do wonder about that then, of like, are we all still going to be able to play like we did when we were little kids? Or are we going to be too scared to climb the tree?
Yes, thank you. Yes. I'm just writing that, scared to climb the tree. Yeah. That's a very current and fizzingly topical observation, I think. Uh, Gabrielle, for you, the emergence of well-being as a concept and what you've noticed and how it was, maybe how it is.
Firstly, fizzingly is the best adjective I've heard all day. Somebody trademarked that. Ooh, again, it's so overwhelming to me. How to be succinct. I love when there's an intimacy coordinator on set. I love it. I just feel so much, and I'm not an actor, and I've got nothing, that's not even my department, but I'm working with that actor, and I've been prepping them for their dialogue, and I've been practicing with them screaming a primal scream in a light German accent, because we know that they're going to be screaming, and let's just yell it with the three gully voice. So I care. And I think that this is what's healthy is caring. I think that words like kindness and care are really important. So I care about that actor, and they're in there and they're doing a thing, and it's diabolical. And all I care about in terms of my role, my job, is to make sure that they're screaming in a light German accent. Yep, clear. So that's my job. But I love having one of our brilliant intimacy coordinators in Australia on set, because I know that everyone's going to be okay. So what's changed? Everything. I was lucky enough to survive Me Too, and I've worked with actresses who have experienced Me Too firsthand, right there, in hotel corridors, and it's criminal. It's criminal. And thank goodness justice is being done. And I'm incredibly proud to be a part of the film industry, because it was the film industry that started Me Too. And I think that we've done an incredible job. You know, sometimes we kind of look to the film and theatre industries and say, oh, these terrible things that are going on. You know, they're not taking care of each other, and oh, it's so terrible. But that's because we're on the front page. We've got famous people, right? So that's clickbait. And we are the people that are changing cultures. So Me Too was a film industry startup that created world change, and people are in prison now, and they should be, and that's excellent. So what have I observed? A lot of good stuff. Things are great now. I mean, touching wood and things on set are great now. They weren't always like that. I didn't survive Time's Up. I didn't, which was the hashtag handle, which is a currency of movement rather than an economic rationalist capitalist patriarchy holding of executive power because I've got the chair, rather a hashtag that created a whole movement that uprooted those exact powerful executive positions. Brilliant. Power to the people. But I've experienced and I've observed so much, and the one thing that did kill me a little bit spiritually was that I missed out on Time's Up. And Time's Up was a hashtag that was around the equal representation of women in the workplace. And I directed some short films back in the day. And yeah, I was not well as a result. And that's what created the shift for me, that I was so unwell in the space of trying to be a female director in film in the early 2000s, and it killed me. It absolutely killed me. won't direct anymore because it was that bad. And what that was about was, I was a woman, I was a cis woman, I was breastfeeding, I had just given birth, 10 weeks before shooting, and I had begged my co-producers. I was a co-producer, director, and co-writer. It's not like I didn't have executive power, but I was a woman, and I was a woman. And I said, can we please shoot? I'm pregnant. And they told me that it would be better for me for us to shoot once the baby was born. And I said, funny thing, I've already had one. I know how this game works. Can we please shoot when I'm pregnant? And they said no. And then they didn't give me time to breastfeed on set, and they didn't allow me time to do anything that I needed to do physiologically. And so Time's Up is the Me Too that didn't get so much attention. Things are much better now. I'm currently working on set with an incredible, oh my God, such a fierce ninja of a director who happens to be female. And I've worked on some feature films in the States directed by women, and the experience has been completely different. And it's because of the film industry that those fantastically talented individuals are leading, because it's not about gender, in my opinion, it's about leadership, and we transcend all that guff. So what have I experienced? Frankly, all of it. All of it. And if it hasn't happened to me, I've worked with actors and directors and producers that it's happened to, or they've been perpetuators of problematic behaviors and situations that we all needed to address. And they used to call it the film game, and now it's called the film industry. It used to be a game for a lot of people. If you had money and access, what a great game. And it's no longer a game, it's very much business. Hopefully that pendulum might sort of stop somewhere, or you know, around art or entertainment. But yeah, it's a lot to talk about.
Thank you. Yes, hugely powerful and deep experiences from a whole range of places. Talia.
Yes, wow. Well, thank you, Bernadette and Gabrielle, for I mean, I think Simon was saying would be hit with an avalanche of gold nuggets or whatever the expression was, and I feel like we just got that then. But maybe just to bounce off briefly those comments, I think the tide is turning. I think the dojo was founded in 2019, so just before the COVID, and kind of when we saw these social movements that Gabrielle referred to kind of really kick off and uproot the world. And I did notice, so the dojo's kind of lens is looking at sports psychology and sport coaching, and whether we can model some of those practices in our field, because they are kind of analogous. There are a lot more similarities than there are differences. And I definitely noticed that pre-pandemic and all these social movements, the reception to something like that was less enthusiastic than it is post those movements and the pandemic. And it does seem to have these ideas, and like even the fact that we're having this conversation today, I think is a testament to the tide turning. But it does seem like these ideas have gone from a maybe nice to have, maybe we'll consider, to a must have, and more so. And I think, as Bernadette and Gabrielle said, I mean, you know, power to it. We just need to, I think, continue the conversation, bring as many diverse voices to the table as possible, encourage people to blaze ahead and pioneer ahead. But I do think the tide is turning.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments about that. Before we get on, that was sort of past and now and what you've noticed. Before we get on to what might need to occur or where the next steps are, I'd just like to bring in, we've mentioned the Actors Wellbeing study a couple of times. If we can bring Dr. Mark in about the research around that does exist. When Mark did it, his was the research that existed, and so since then there have been some changes and some movements. So an update on the research and the latest stats on actor health and well-being, and any particular concerns that are arising from the recent research movement. Dr. Ma.
That's right. Thanks, Simon, and thanks everyone so far for watchable shares. Wonderful. I think something I'd pick up straight away on is when we did this first national study of actor wellbeing, it was a study that used both what we call in the academic world quantitative research. So this is research about how many people do this, how many people feel this, how many people make this much money, how many people actors make this much money and so on. So they're very much numbers. And I have a few numbers which may be of interest and might stimulate discussion. But equally important was the qualitative research that we did. So we asked questions, very general questions, because we didn't want to impose on the professional acting community, because they were the participants of this study. We didn't want to impose on them a preconception of what we thought was right or what we thought was wrong or what we thought was a problem or what we thought wasn't a problem. We really just asked, you know, when your work as a professional actor, when might you experience stress? And we didn't even spell out what that stress might look like. And so we will get feedback on that. Or we might ask a question, and I've actually got a quote here. If your interpersonal relationships with partners, family, friends, employers, if those relationships are affected by your work as a performer, please tell us more about it. Who knew if anyone would actually reply to that? And I think that's the one I'd like to share something of, because we actually had, out of a total research group for this study, which was 782 participants, which is pretty good that's about 10% of the professional acting community in Australia. So statistically a significant number. But we had 419 out of that 782 who responded to this question about, were there any challenges, interesting things that happen with interpersonal relationships? And actually one of the high things that was picked up on was isolation, that the actor feels isolated, they're working at a distance or they're working over a long period of time. They're touring or just simply working what are called unsociable hours, that they're up and working where everyone is thinking about having a meal, going to bed, and then they come home and they need to rest and sleep, and then the rest of the world starts without them while they're asleep. So that unsociable work. And then, not surprisingly, followed up by work, income, financial uncertainty, stresses, particularly if the actor in question becomes ill. That's a significant loss of income, perhaps. We were interested to see that there were creative challenges that impacted on their interpersonal relationships, because they become preoccupied with the preparation for performance, particularly the theatre actors, preoccupied with creating character over a sustained period of time and then living in that character over a season of performance. And then there would be things like mood shifts, feelings even of worthlessness and inadequacy that would impact on their family and friends. Depression was mentioned, but also families just not understanding. We've already had some of the conversations that, you know, why are you doing this? You know, it's not secure. It's so unpredictable. Why are you doing? All these things factored in the research. So I think that's been really interesting, and it's an area that I as an ongoing researcher, and I'm reading a lot of doctoral research and dissertations exploring different aspects of actor well-being. So I'm now seeing research conducted around the warm-up and the cool down of the actor, that we just opened up that question 10 years ago, and now there's been several pieces on that. There's now, I was just assessing another doctoral thesis today, looking at really strategic ways of moving in and out of character and distinguishing between, as I think it was Talia who said, the acting and the actor, and kind of being much clearer about those things. But I'm not yet seeing, even though we kind of raised the question 10 or so years ago, not yet seeing a lot of conversation around how can we do the relationship bit better. So it's kind of interesting what has been brought to people's attention, particularly brought to actor training centres through our national study, and what is yet to be perhaps further explored. Another thing was bullying and harassment in the workplace. This was something we identified 12 years ago, and then subsequently, with a lot of public scandals around harassment and so on, it became a union concern. and then the union picked up and stepped up and started bringing about policy in the area of harassment and bullying. And as you've heard mentioned, of course, now also bringing to the fore practices like intimacy direction and so on. So lots of interesting things have emerged out of our research, and our research is still, I think, unfortunately, one of the few detailed studies of professional actors. I hope that if there are studies being conducted in the UK or the US or Canada, that we are seeing those in the public space as well, which would be great.
Terrific, thank you. Wow, there's noticing the development of that. There is always from almost nothing at all to lots of really more and more research coming out about specific elements. I'd love to find out some more about that warm-ups and cool-downs thing, because every practitioner of every single stripe, of every single sub-style of acting, music, dance, movement does warm-ups and cool-downs. And that would be, oh, that's fascinating. Is there a particular area that you think, Mark, over the next sort of 5 years that the industry is sort of leaning towards in terms of research or focus?
Ooh. Good question. I'm now seeing studies emerge from parts of Europe that weren't part of the conversation before. So a study conducted in Norway, which has a strong tradition of what's the term, repertory theatre companies. So there's been very much an attempt to manage the output of drama schools into potentially ongoing full-time work in repertory companies. This was actually something that happened in the Eastern Bloc in East Germany during the period of the Cold War in East Germany. They made sure they trained just enough actors to then, when they graduated, get into the theatre companies, and then everyone kind of was guaranteed a job. And that looked very attractive because you actually didn't have this uncertainty that we kind of often welcome as supposedly the norm. But here are two case studies where it's not quite the norm. However, this most recent study in Norway has identified that many actors actually, as much as they love the regular income, they don't like having to always be the spear carrier or whatever that might be. You know, when's their chance to be Hamlet or Ophelia, or to stretch their wings in some other new role, or do some experimental work and still have a job to come back to in a repertory theatre? And particularly film and television will take you away out of a theatre run, and how you negotiate that is just as much a challenge for Norway as it is for other parts of the world. So I think there's one ongoing conversation. I know in the UK, there's been a move to bring back more repertory companies to give particularly immediately emerging graduate actors more time to develop and hone their craft. So I think that's interesting. And then I'm aware of work in Bulgaria and in Romania, and they are kind of becoming very proactive now to actually try and establish an equivalent body to ASPAH here in Australia, or PAMA in the States, or BAPAM in the UK. They see there would be great value if there was somebody as an institutional body that could liaise between the different drama programs around Europe to help encourage and communicate things into those languages. And in fact, that reminds me, I spoke with someone the other day who's based in Madrid, Spain. They're very dependent often on Spanish translations of dissertations and research. So just because we're fairly privileged here, I recognize, or English speaking, how are these things to be made accessible to the worldwide acting community who work across many different languages? So I think that's going to be an interesting question to emerge or to follow up.
Thank you, and that's very exciting. The growth, of the international research in the international world, in what we all know is a particularly instantly global market. You know, if one of my YouTube clips goes viral, hint, I'm available. Netflix, I could be a Norwegian spear carrier. I can. Instantly, the profile can go from local to everywhere within the space of a few months. And so having that research going on and developing those links between jurisdictions and countries and styles and cultures is so encouraging to hear. That's fascinating. Thank you, Mark, for those. That's really, interesting. Always try and get stuck next to Mark Seaton on a plane flight. You will learn so much. Okay, so we've talked a bit about past and how the world is now. I guess one of our last questions, just with our own time, so we can have some time for questions from our viewers. What's next for actor well-being, for life and work? So what are you noticing as you see it around at the moment? There've been you mentioned some of the massive changes that have happened. What do you see as, or what this would be good for the next 5 or 10 years in the world of acting training? How do we build on well-being and for personal and professional life? Where do we need to go? What's needed? Talia.
Okay, so that's a massive question. I can speak to my little corner of the world, and then I'll let I'll let everybody else speak to their corner of the world. So at the dojo, we have what we call the working, in parentheses, that's not a Big Mac, that's working parentheses, the working model of peak performance, of actor peak performance. And so it's this little triangle model that has holistic well-being as the foundation at the bottom, and then acting training and actor training at the side, and all these things together culminating in peak performance as an actor. So like I've kind of alluded to, my research team and I, we're approaching this from a sport psychology and sport coaching perspective. That's by no means the only perspective that this problem, massive, mind-blowing, systemic, huge, messy problem / opportunity could be solved or approached. That's just how we're approaching it. And we're doing that because circus has politely stolen from sports psychology, dance has politely stolen from sports psychology, and music has politely stolen from sports psychology. So we're kind of the only ones that hasn't taken advantage of this yet, and that's our focus. But all that said, even though I'm very passionate about that, I think there's massive potential there. I think let's just approach this from every angle. Let's bring everybody to the table, everybody's experience, everybody's perspective, everybody's lived experience, just everything. I think the more that we can encourage everybody from every background to come up to contribute, I think the more comprehensive and sustainable probably a solution we'll have to this massive question that Simon's just casually dropped on us on a Saturday evening.
Great. Thank you so much, Talia. Gabrielle.
I have some thoughts. Okay. Two things. One, it's too hard, when people who love us, my beautiful late father used to say, don't you think you'd be better, behind the camera, and like go to, I went to university for just under 8 years, or tertiary, credit, something to fall back on, and like Bernadette was saying, like this talent monster keeps coming up and saying, but hang about, I'm put on this earth to do this. I think that and Talia's got it. Talia's actually got it. Like having wellness at the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then acting, and then being an actor, and then that's it. Go to Talia, ask Talia. Because my observation and experience has been that if one is to survive and thrive as an actor, there needs to be necessarily a balance between business and passion. And so not everybody wants to hear this, right? But like back in the day, back when I was cutting my teeth, not everybody graduated. You know, when we played Pass the Parcel, everybody didn't get a prize. You got culled. You got culled. It was brutal. And then in contrast to that, the incredible Lynn Pierce said to us at the beginning of my first day as a postgrad at NIDA, she said, "You're all competing against each other, right?" And we all had to sort of confess, like, yeah, we've already sussed out the room, and we're thinking, well, I've got her number and I've got his number, and I'm going to just elbow my way through it, because that was the generation of there was no wellness, it was success, right? That was the thing. So we were all really clear of that this was a competition. And she said, "You're making a huge mistake if you're competing against the people around you. You must only ever compete with yourself." And whilst that could be also highly dysfunctional, she's right. And I think of it every day. Like, my only competition is my laziness or my ignorance or my entitlement or so this balance between business and passion, ultimately, and I know this isn't maybe popular right now, but look, there are other jobs, do you know? So at once honoring what Bernadette was saying is like the passion monster. I'm the same. I'm writing a children's book at the moment. It will flow, like things will happen. I'm not going to stop being me. I have to keep creating. That's just how I am well, by doing it. The trouble comes when there's a dollar attached to it. Now, I'm a feminist and a communist, well, maybe not a democratic, but look, I didn't create capitalism. I do have a finite time on this planet to survive in it. And as a mother, I've got that thing of like, yeah, right, it's not even about me. Like, I need to put food on the table. So there might come a time where one needs to look at one's career and assess and suggest, maybe this isn't my job, maybe this is my passion. And I didn't work because I wasn't remunerated. I volunteered in amateur theatre for 15 years, and and did student films for nothing for 15 years. I have no regrets in that space. I don't regret for a second, because I knew it was volunteerism. We used to clean out the toilets at New Theatre in thanks for having the opportunity to tread the boards, but it was complicit. I knew what the dealio was, and I signed up for that, and I learnt a ton, and I have no regret. And I still credit those days as being the best experiences. So amateur theatre and not financial and not paid and all that kind of stuff is great. We're in a tricky phase now at the moment, and this is not what's next, but the phase that we're in is where people are paying to play. They're paying to go to workshops so that they can touch the cloak of people like me who have Robert Downey's phone number, and they're touching the cloak, and then they go and they put on their resume, worked with Gabby Rogers, and they give it to their agent, who's a background artist agent, but swears they're going to get them a speaking role one day. Like, there's this whole industry of taking advantage of people who are really driven, really motivated, really passionate. Are they professionals? I don't know. I can't determine that. Only they can determine that, and the market forces at work. What's happening now, as opposed to what's happening next, is that we have a situation where, and again, Tim mentions 7 rules of success. Don't be singular. Don't be, it's my dream. Look at that shiny thing coming up the periphery. You could end up being, you might be a better dialect coach than you are an actor. When you look at a call sheet, there's like 5 actors' names, 1 director, and 257 other jobs. Like, I'm really interested in educating the community that like this is a business, like it's not that big a deal. The fact that those people are great artists and they move us and it's brilliant on screen or on stage, yeah, that's great, but that's a job. They get in their cars, they go home, they take the kids to school tomorrow. So number two is that man there, Simon Ward, he's responsible for one of the most successful well-being experiences that I had this year. I was working with an actor. She was playing a highly intense role, and unfortunately for her, she spent 2/3 of the show off stage in this held state of massive, the stakes, they don't get bigger. The stakes don't get bigger. And she had played the role on stage 4.5 hours classically many times. So she knew the role, but she had to hold it and then bring it and breathe it on. And I worked with Simon. We also had some young people. We had some children. And I worked with Simon and I picked his brain and I sucked the marrow out of his talent. And he helped me understand not, the words that I use are not cooling down, but warming down. Because you're hot when you come off stage or when you come off set. My day players on these big, I'm talking like big productions, and they've got a 50-worder, they've got a day play, and they're on stage for one day. They've been hair and costume and makeup and dialect and stunts and rehearsal with the director, but ultimately they're on stage for one day tops. When they leave that lot, and when an actor comes off stage having performed that huge role, they need help then. And I see that at the moment as my point of focus. These are talented people. These are capable people. They know what they're doing. They're brilliant. They're talented. I just give them the sounds. But what they are really missing, and where they get thrown out into the lot, into the parking, the car park, the parking lot. Sorry, I've been working in American. When they get kicked out into the parking lot, that's when it comes apart, because it's just like, oh my God, everyone's amazing. Yeah, do you want vegan? Yeah, soy latte? Yeah, oh great. Dialect, oh no, bye, and you're gone. Next, and the big machinery keeps going, and there they are. So my second thing is about cool down, and I think warm down for me is great languaging, because they are hot, and they need to come back to being a person who did a thing. So when people say, oh, character sustainment, I've been living with this character for 3 months, that for me is a massive red flag to your ability as a craftsperson and to your wellness as a human being. Don't stay in the accent all weekend. That's ridiculous. You don't say to a and thank you, Talia, for taking sports physiology, and Mark introduced me to the PAMA, who are also expert at highlighting, look at all the money and energy that goes into sports psychology. Isn't that fantastic? Imagine if we had that for actors. So yeah, we're just stealing with style, as we always do, right? Rather than cooling down, let's warm them down. Let's bring them back to being a person. And the most interesting actors are the people that are interested. And you can't be interested in observation and the world. You can't go to a football game and a gallery and ask your friends how they are and check in on your neighbor if you're consumed with your own process. If you're stuck, don't stay in it. It's a job, mate. It's a craft. Let it go. Part of the craft, sorry, I'm very verbose. Part of the craft is learning how to get out of the job, out of the role, let it go, and switch off. Switch off. Didn't we just have like an industrial relations moment where they can't contact you? You can't be expected to reply to emails. It's the same with character development or character performance. You're done, mate. You've been doing it for 10 hours. Let it go. And if there's one thing that needs to be developed, it's helping actors. In my opinion, it's helping actors. What comes next? Helping them recognize it's a craft. It's an incredible talent. It's an incredible gift. It's not just a job, but if it's not remunerating you, then you need to get smart. And I'm economically rationalist only because I'm in capitalism. I didn't build this boat, but I'm in it. So I've waited tables, I've cleaned toilets, I ran several businesses along the side to just get by. It's dangerous and not good for your craft, I would argue, to be financially dependent upon booking the next gig. Because then you walk into the room of the audition, like Bryan Cranston said so beautifully in that wonderful little bit where someone stuck a microphone in his face, and he said, I used to think that my job was going to the audition and booking the job. And he said, I realized one day that's not my job at all. I've been given this script and provided the opportunity to create the performance of what I would do if I was playing this role. I do that, I go into the room, or these days, of course, we record it on our phone and we do it and we go, that's me doing that job, that's it, job done, that's it. And so if that's not earning you a living financially, then absolutely you need a side hustle. Your side hustle could take all kinds of configurations, but sort your financial life out, because connecting your validation as a creative person, nothing would have got made. I'm not going to go the big guys with Van Gogh, but what about A Confederacy of Dunces? What a great novel. If he had been dependent upon a publishing deal, oh wait, yeah, no, he did exactly what I don't want everyone to do. Yeah, like you cannot equate your worth with booking the gig.
Thank you. Yep, another t-shirt there. Bernadette.
Talia and I have spoken about this very briefly a couple of years ago in Ballarat. Back in the day, back in the 90s and up until well, at least 2014, QUT did have a sports psychologist. And so he was the same guy that worked with, I think it was the Broncos or the Lions, one of the football teams in Queensland. And so he was working with these elite sports people, but he was also working with the actors, and he worked with them at different times throughout first, second, and third year. And he would even come to showcase. So QUT is an actor training course in Queensland, but they would take their showcase at the end of third year down to Sydney. And Dr. Phil, as his name is, he would actually even come. So that was the week they'd be showing off their wares to the industry in Sydney. They would be going to barbecues and meet and greets and things like that, trying to land agents. And he was there for all of that. Now, at that time, I suppose the trainers, their ability to maintain their well-being was that even though the university was hassling them to write research papers, they bluntly refused. And so they were able to focus their time on actually, you know, making sure that they could look after the students and help them. And so they just didn't write about it. So that's what's really great, that we have people like Mark and Simon to be writing about this stuff. But I have to say that that sort of moves me into the idea that with actor training, we have to consider the well-being of the actor trainers. And I think at the moment, that's where it's actually a disaster. I myself had to withdraw from the training programs, not only because I needed my own space and my own joy, but that, you know, working in actor training for nearly 25 years and every year being told we don't have as much money this year as we had last year. So you're constantly in this, oh, we've got no money, but we have to do more things. And there's less full-time staff in actor training now. The students then get less hours. So if we're going to talk about teaching them about well-being and teaching them about warm-ups and warm-downs and all of that, good luck, because I don't know whether the students, unfortunately, even though the teachers are doing their best, the structure of the university doesn't allow anymore for the arts programs to actually be independent of the university timetable and those sorts of things. So that's something that really needs to be addressed, because ultimately the students are looking at their trainers and their trainers are all completely overworked out of their minds, just trying to hold on. And so unfortunately, their trainers, you know, it's like you've got to practice what you preach. And the university system, unfortunately, from what I can see around me, and I have to say, most people I talk to who have left university work, they use words like escape. I escaped it. Yeah, I got away from there. You know, this is awful sort of imagery that trainers are using. So that is something that we really need to seriously look at. But for my ideally in actor training, we shouldn't just have voice teachers, movement teachers, and acting teachers, and you know, a theory teacher or two. We also, I would really want a physiotherapist, a sports psychologist, and a speech pathologist, otolaryngologist, somebody like that. So instead of getting rid of the staffs that are supposed to be there to support actors in training, we should have more staff. But a university could really do that because they have, you know, sports medicine, they have psychology, they have speech pathology in the university structure. But every time we try to talk about it, we only get, no, it would cost too much. So that's, to me, the next big thing. There you go, Mark. And Simon, that's your challenge.
Absolutely. Yes, seeing a lot of amens and to that. Yes, as someone who's just run some staff professional development stuff on this, the thing that came out of it was we need some more. So it's desperate, and again, it's that I suppose the thing about context is also so influential, and the trend, courtesy of our friends in the business world, of, oh no, all the problems are about how you are not like doing stuff for you. And whilst that is of course very helpful, one does not live in a Dyson. We aren't in a vacuum. You know, it's important to recognize as the Me Too movement did, as the Time's Up movement did, as those big social shifts, that for the teachers and the trainers, oh my goodness, yep, a similar thing is happening. Mark, where to next as far as for the industry, for wellbeing?
Wow, I feel we've got enough already. But yeah, no, joining the chorus in the chat, the amen, particularly to what's been articulated around the educators and this greater stress on them, I think is so crucial. I think a thing I'm keen to see, I hope is going to happen in the future. I'm seeing, I guess we're getting kind of a, not necessarily a Me Too movement, but we actually are having an actor wellbeing facilitator movement, which is emerging literally over these last 6 months. It's very exciting to see what may emerge, or what is emerging out of just the conversations between people who are passionate about the well-being of their peers, their students, if they have students, because this actor wellbeing facilitator is recognizing coaches as well as educators, as well as health professionals, psychotherapists, physios, and the like. I'm hoping the next piece will be that in our national and international performing arts, healthcare and medicine programs, that actors and their well-being, and the people who teach the actors well-being, is a part of the agenda equal to that of musicians and dancers and circus performers. This has been my vision and drive over the last 25 years, because when I went looking for these kind of conversations, there are only one or two around. I needed to go to the dance community to see what they were doing and the questions they were answering. And in more recent years, I've actually gone to the legal community, the law wellness movement, to see what they're doing, because if they can take seriously health and well-being and are not put off by the culture of lawyering and how that can often be very conservative, then that to me is an inspiration for us in the arts as well, not to be backward in speaking our mind and our heart about what, and at the end it supports culture. Like I like to position that as well, that actually we're doing this with and for our world, our community, that we bring the arts, we're storytellers, and we're telling the new stories that need to be told. So that's probably what I'd add.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Mark, for that. Absolutely. And as you will notice, viewers, that all of these conversations are live and dynamic and progressing and vital, and happen between wonderfully enthusiastic and interested people who really are passionate about being passionate, and making sure that that is we can keep that and protect that. The questions in the chat, if anyone has any questions or things that they would like to, or observations that they'd like to fling out to our panel tonight. We've had one.
Yeah, Simon, go on. You've
Oh,
seen
sorry.
the first one?
Yeah, so the first one was regarding whether or not, from Jeff, do many actor training schools run cool down activities and teach students de-rolling techniques? And someone's commented JMC Academy in Brisbane does. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in our seminar on training organizations. But to our panel, are you aware specifically about de-rolling techniques? Those of you who've been in the teaching world a bit, any comments to make about that process?
Not so much within the training itself at the moment, I don't know, but in terms of the passing on the wisdom of the tribe, what I love at the moment is that a woman that I taught when she was 16, 17, and then she trained in theatre, and now she's become an intimacy coach, and I think she'd probably be in maybe her 40s now. And I know that when people have told me about working with her, she's doing de-rolling activities with a lot of independent theatre companies in Brisbane. And if we go back to that idea of that, a lot of people who say they're actors and they say that they're trained actors, you know, they've maybe done a couple of hours of workshops with Gabrielle, and you know, they've done an acting class with Chubbuck, and hey presto, they're fully trained. So to have people who are coming to independent theatre with that level of training, and then they're getting people like intimacy coaches who are teaching things like de-rolling activities, I think, you know, that's really exciting. And it takes it out of the hands of the universities, because the teachers haven't got time.
Mark?
Yeah. Just a quick note that I think there are a few programs that have been introducing the notion of warm down or cool down. So we noticed in the chat JMC, and partly that's a consequence, I suspect, of Simon and myself, who both teach into the program at JMC across their 3 campuses, Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, have been very passionate about introducing such valuable practices around both warm-ups and warming down as an important part. And I was doing this before I taught at JMC. I've taught at other institutions, and so it's been a part of my ongoing practice to teach around that area as well. And I noted from the chat that there's also a rare situation, UK drama schools is being noted there. So some are doing it, some aren't. And as I shared tonight, there is ongoing research which is now being evidence-based, which is really important as well. So we're not just doing it on what we have a hunch may be helpful, but we're now actually starting to study it, and it doesn't mean that we have to become a science. I think we could have some reservations about some of the positivist notions of science, but nonetheless, there is a value for evidence that these things are useful and sustainable.
Absolutely. And thank you. So just with an eye on the time, thank you, Ashley, for your question about warm-ups and cool-downs and favorite exercises for actors. We might press pause on that. Oh, no, there's Bernadette has put warm-up, Berry, Linklater, Rodenberg, Pilates. I love that. That's fantastic. Sounds like it's a firm solicitors. Berry, Linklater, Rodenberg, Pilates, warm down, group C. Love it. Thank you so much for our all of you for coming. Thank you for joining us here. Mark and I were very, very excited and thrilled and nervous and terrified and excited and nervous and thrilled and terrified about hosting this. Well, I was anyway. And so thank you so much for your attendance, and particularly please give applaud wherever you are, please, for our wonderful participants, Dr. Bernadette, Gabrielle, and Talia. Thank you so much for so much. It has been an honor, a joy, and a thrill. There is at least a book or a Netflix documentary in each of you about this. I look forward to the launch of all of them. Just saying. That's all right. I'm available for a cameo, Norwegian spear holder, in case you're wondering. All right, I'll wait for your calls. Thank you very much for joining us. Our next panel. Yeah. Sorry, go, Mark. You're about to say...
I'll pick up on that. Our next panel, I'm going to share the screen for this.
Oh, lovely.
Having gone to the trouble of creating it this afternoon. So our next gathering, webinar, will have some other new guests with us. It's entitled "The Show Must Go On, but at What Cost to Actor Wellbeing?" So that will be on Saturday, the 7th of December. Again, at this 6 p.m. time slot. If you are in Sydney and Melbourne and other parts of Australia that take on daylight saving, that happens as of, in fact, tomorrow. So for all our international folk, we will, when we promote this through the links, we'll also give you the international time zones that match our daylight saving. So that's one thing. And also wanted to draw your attention, I'll just bring another slide here, that ASPAH, who are hosting this whole series of webinars, we're really, again, grateful for that. They are having their 15th annual conference. So the Australian Society of Performing Arts Healthcare has now been running for 15 years, which is very exciting. And this conference for this year will be hosted in Melbourne from the 23rd to the 24th of November. I've provided a website there if you want to do a screen capture of the URL, or if you just put in ASPAH, and it will pull it up and you can look for the conference 2024. And so that will be available for you to consider coming along and contributing to particularly the actor wellbeing conversation at that event. Thank you, Simon. Back to you for the final.
And thank you, Rebecca, for plonking that link into the chat.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you so much. If you have ongoing questions that bubble up for one of our panelists, please do email the return address, which I think is Mark. Is that yours?
Why don't I just put it in the chat?
You put it in the chat, and then
yes.
We can send any questions on to our panelists. If you're writing things down, what was most interesting, helpful, or surprising about today is my favorite summary question. If you're driving home, make sure you have a car. Thank you very much to everyone for being here. If our three panelists could hang around for a little bit, that'd be great. In the meantime, thank you very much. Good night. You've been wonderful. We've been Mark and Simon, and we'll see you in December. Goodbye.
Bye.